people I call retrogrades.
How to re-evangelize the de-Christianized West.
Support us in any way you can, most especially by your prayers.
From an authentically Catholic perspective.
Right-minded, righteous group that's equal in strength to the radicals.
From an authentically masculine perspective.
You and your friends versus me and my friends. Bring it on. Hi everybody, Retrogrades out there. This is Tim Gordon with Dave Gordon, and today we're pleased to bring you our friend, my brother from another mother, a lifelong Californian, give or take the last 4 or 5 years or so, Mr. Jesse Romero, a good friend. I'm glad to have been acquainted with Jesse just recently. How the heck are you, Jesse?
I'm too blessed to be stressed, and I'm glad to be on with the Gordon brothers.
Good to have you on. Thanks, Jesse.
We're excited.
My pleasure. Honored.
Yeah, been pumped to interview you about this book here. You did talk to Taylor about it on the Taylor Marshall channel, The Devil in the City of Angels. I encourage everybody, not just because Dave and I are fellow TAN authors, but just because it's such a darn tootin' good book. It's a riveting read. I'm about halfway through it now. But yes, of course, because we are also brothers as authors on TAN, the three of us. So there's a TAN Books siblingship there. Jesse, how was your experience publishing for TAN? They're great people, aren't they?
Yeah, they're working on another book right now, but I'll tell you why I wrote this book, because a lot of people have had these encounters with the diabolical, but people just they just basically just shut down. They don't want to talk about it. They become reclusive. And then some people start thinking, am I weird? Am I the only one that things like this happen to? And this is, since I'm kind of a public Catholic, I said, you know what? I've had a lot of these encounters, and I know everybody has, but it's one of those inconvenient truths that nobody wants to talk about. So I said, I'm going to put it out there just to get people, make them know that they're not crazy, that it's okay to talk about these things. But the solution is, my last chapter of that book is going back to Jesus Christ, to a life of faith, prayer, and the sacraments. So the book, though it talks about encounters with the diabolical and witches, my book, I would say, it ultimately leads people to Christ. It's not demon-centered, it's Christ-centered.
Sure. Yeah, Jesse, I think one of the problems why demonology and things having to do with exorcism and I guess the occult, it seems so fringy within the world of Catholicism is because there's very little actual study being done on them. So for all of the efforts that are being kind of directed towards, like in the mass media and say in Hollywood and say in maybe published works, published books, that are covering the topic of exorcism and the demonic, very little scholarly study being done on this stuff, which there needs to be. There's a blank, actually, for large swaths of the history of the church on its exorcism rites. I actually proposed doing a paper on this when I was in graduate school, and I had started the research phase, and there's just so little out there about it, and a lot of the stuff is actually anecdotal. I mean, what do you think about that? Do you think that the church could kind of commission some academic studies on this so that it would kind of further it as a science and it would give it more credibility in people's eyes? Because this stuff is real.
Yeah, good question. I will tell you that after the Second Vatican Council, this whole topic fell kind of into disuse as a result of the modernists and as a result of basically progressives in power. And so what happened is the Protestants, they flooded the market the last 50, 60 years with Protestant deliverance books. And so what a lot of Catholics did, they were hungry to know more about this area because they know that this is something that we believe in, angels and demons. So Catholics started buying these Protestant books and started setting up these little, Catholic, healing ministries and getting themselves into a lot of trouble because they don't know the rules of engagement. And so I thank God that probably about a little over about 10 years ago, probably about 10, 15 years ago, Father Gabriel Amorth, rest in peace. He was an exorcist in Rome, the chief exorcist in Rome for 29 years. He's the one that broke the ground open with his book, An Exorcist Tells His Story by Ignatius. Then he came out with another book, An Exorcist, More Stories. He's come out with a third book recently. He passed away 3 years ago. And as a result of that, I think that helped a lot of Catholics to start saying, hey, this is an unexplored area in the last 50 years. We've been leaning on Protestants, but they have a deficient understanding. They have a deficient theology and a sacramental system. So now you've got more and more Catholic authors that have been involved in this, that are writing about this from a fairly academic level. And I can tell you one that's groundbreaking, a priest by the name of Father Chad Ripperger. He started an institute in Denver, Colorado. It's called Liber Christu. That's Latin for liberation through Christ. LiberChristu.org. And it's an institute where he has very good instructors in the field of healing, deliverance, and exorcism. And they're putting out some academic lectures and academic books on this topic now. You also have another cadre of exorcists over at Mundelein called the Pope Leo the 13th century. You have a lot of good people that have written and are writing and putting out good information from the Pope Leo the 13th Institute. You know, people such as, Father Jeffrey Grob. You got one of the guys from Northern California, very, very involved, Father Gary Thomas. And so you're getting from these two institutes, the Pope Leo the 13th Institute and the Liber Christo in Denver, Colorado, they're starting to flood the market with good academic material on the topic of the diabolical.
You mentioned, Jesse, that there's a kind of trepidation or hesitation on the part of, I guess, the supply side, the people that have experienced stories of the demonic, like yourself. I didn't even know till you wrote this book, as much as we've talked. There's a similar, I guess, corresponding reticence on the side, on the demand side. When people are sitting around listening to your stories, I want to call your attention to page 13 of your book. Excellent book here. Everyone run out and get it. Devil in the City of Angels. There's a similar reticence among the faithful, and I think it might be a greater problem among the more faithful, particularly among so-called trads, the pious. When you hear a story of, say, Jesse Romero talking about a levitation that he witnesses as a sheriff's deputy with his fallen away Catholic partner, I literally read the line twice, right? I literally read it twice, and I was just like, because I've never experienced anything like that, and I've seen a story on Fox News of a similar levitation. It was actually on Hannity. Can you believe that? I think Hannity might need an exorcism right now. Call that boy back to the Catholic Church. But I mean, I'm glad I'm friends with Jesse, because I'm going to ask him about this next week when I talk to him. I read the line twice and I said, wow, a levitation 12 or 18 inches above the ground. All this reticence boils down to is the question, really? I mean, so now I have you here, my friend.
Right.
Really? Like that's incredible. And I know, I just trust you. Some of these accounts are third hand. I don't know if I trust the druggie, but I trust you, and that's firsthand.
My eyeball saw this. These 2020 eyes saw this. And it's funny, and I'll tell you how it went down, but it's funny. I got two boys out here that are Phoenix cops. They work the night shift out here. And one of my boys told me, he said, Dad, he called me. He was scared. He says, our unit went to go close down a party, loud music, drunks, people were fighting. He said, and two veteran officers here in Phoenix PD walked in, this 15-year-old kid that was causing a disturbance in this family, beating people up and breaking stuff. He was in a hallway. They walked to him. They said, young man, we want to see your hands. The young man was sitting on a chair. He turned to the both Phoenix officers. My son's outside on the radio car, just kind of calling for backup. And these two senior officers, very respected in Phoenix PD, said that the kid came off the chair, levitated, and was suspended on the air for about a minute or two. The father came and kind of pushed him down. Both these veteran cops walked out. They walked to the station. My son said, "What's the matter? What's the matter?" He said, "These guys were white as ghosts." He said, like they had seen hell. They went to the station. My son goes over there. He's writing his report. They walk into the sergeant's office and they said, "Sergeant, we don't know how to process this." And one guy like broke down. And he began narrating everything about what he saw. My son, he has his ear to the watch commander's door writing all this stuff down. I told my son, "What would you have done if you would have seen somebody levitate? If you would have saw it?" He goes, "Dad, I would have immediately started praying St. Michael the Archangel's prayers in a loop." I said, "Good man, I taught you right." Let me tell you about my case. I worked East Los Angeles Sheriff Station from probably, I think like 86 to 98. Okay, that's one of the substations in Los Angeles. Worked the night shift all the time, basically 4 to midnight, or sometimes 6 to 2 in the morning, called the overlap shift. I was with a partner, fallen away Catholic. It's probably about 11 o'clock at night. We're about to get off in an hour. Typical Saturday night call, 4:15 family. That means a family fight, disturbance, people drunk, loud music, neighbors complaining. So me and my partner, we're a few blocks away. We answer the call. They give us the call. They dispatch us to the scene. We get there pretty quickly, maybe 2 or 3 minutes. It was upstairs. It was in a kind of a rough, well, all of East LA is pretty rough. So that's kind of that statement, you know, we went to a second-story apartment in East LA on a Saturday night, which already lends itself to potential violence. I'm greeted by an old lady. I would call her, as a Hispanic, an abuelita, a grandma, some abuelita. Huh. She said, "Officer, I'm the one that called you." She opened the door. She was happy to see us, and she said, "My grandson's out of control. He's attacking everybody. He's cursing, and he's destroying everything in the house." And then she told me in Spanish, since I speak Spanish. I said, "What's the problem? Is he on drugs?" She goes, No, está endemoniado. I said, "Okay, endemoniada, that means he has a demon." That's what it literally means. But that's kind of a common phrase in Spanish, so I didn't pay too much attention to that.
Right.
And so me and my partner walk inside. My partner stood by the door just waiting for backup. I walked in since I'm kind of the Spanish speaker. And I'm looking at a young guy. He's probably about 14 or 15 years old. He's on his back, but you could tell he's fighting, okay? You could tell he's wrestling, and 4 men are over him. I asked the grandmother, "Who are they?" They go, "That's the uncles. That's his uncles, and that's his father." So you got like 4 guys holding him. They're holding his appendages. They're like restraining him. And you can see they're like trying to hold him down because he's fighting. He wants to get up. And, you know, he's growling. I'm like saying, okay, that's kind of strange. He's trying to bite the hands of his uncles, of his father. He's shaking violently. He was spitting. And so I walk over there and I can see, as I look at the kid who's on his back and they're holding him down, I'm trying to process this. I asked the grandmother, "Is he a drug addict?" No, he has no history of drugs. I said, "What do you think this is?" She says, "Está endemoniado." That's all she kept saying. I said, okay. I said, so I told the men, I said, "Who's the father?" This one guy said, "I'm the father." I said, okay, it's good that you're here. Now, the grandmother went to a room and said, "Officer, here's the only thing that I haven't told you." And she came out and gave me a board game. So I looked at it closely. It said Parker Brothers Ouija board. I'm like, okay. And she goes, "He plays with us every night and he locks his door for hours. And he's always talking to people in there, and he plays loud music. It's awful music." I said, okay, this interesting. So I asked the wife, I said, "Do you guys practice your Catholic faith?" She goes, I do, but my son's not so much, and my grandson not so much as well." And so my partner's there at the door calling for backup. And at this point, I could just sense my mom and dad were part of the Legion of Mary, and they told me about stuff like this. And in fact, I actually saw this one time. You know, I'm going to hit the rewind button. When I was like 19, I didn't mention this in the book. This is kind of personal, so I won't mention my brother's name. But my brother did some things that got him in trouble with the diabolical. And I remember my mom and dad, I'm 18 or 19, and they call a Catholic priest in. They go to the room, and I know my brother, he's depressed, and he doesn't get out of the bed for weeks, and he's always screaming in his room and stuff. And my mom and dad just say, just pray for him. He's going through a deep state of depression. They call the priest in, and my mom and dad said, we want you to see this so that you don't do the same thing that he did. So me and my other brothers were kind of peeking at the door, and there was a Catholic priest. My mom and dad were there, a couple of other people from the Legion of Mary that they had invited. And the priest is praying over my brother. And I'm seeing a bunch of men hold my brother down. And I'm saying, Mom, what's the matter with my brother? She said, he did some things where he invited a demon. I said, really? I could see them all praying. I'm right there in the door jam, 18, 19 years old. I'm just a looky-loo. But what I did see, if you've ever been to a carnival and you ever see that game Whack-A-Mole, I can see from my brother's torso, I can see his torso was rising like there was a softball inside, and it would come up, then it would go down. It would go now another part. It would come up, then it would go down. It was happening in different parts. I'm seeing this with my other brothers and sister. That was the first, and I'm seeing my brother scream in these ungodly screams that I've never heard him utter since then. And so I had seen this before, and my mom and dad had told me. They said, there's nothing that the LA Sheriff's Department is going to teach you to protect yourself from this. You've got to be a practicing Catholic, and when you see something like this, you've got to pray. So at that moment, I'm in this apartment out here in East LA, and I'm saying, man, we weren't trained. We don't know how to deal with this. What do? Shoot the guy? You can't shoot the guy. Tase him? You can't tase him. He's not.
That's not part of our. Your partner said that's not part of our academy training. I laughed out loud.
Yeah, no, he did.
Shooting demons, you got to get out your proton pack like a Ghostbuster, right?
My partner is like basically looking at me like, you could tell he's deferring to me, and he's got his gun at the door. He's got his gun out, and I'm saying, dude, put your gun back in. And at this point, I remembered back what happened like 10 years before with my brother, and I said, I got to pray. So I started saying, you guys Catholic? Yeah, we're Catholic. Start praying. I got all the men there to start praying the rosary, and they're all praying it in Spanish in a loop. And the grandmother started leading. And now we're all kind of scared, myself included, so we're praying the rosary loud. You know, it's funny. You think like if you pray it louder, it's going to be more powerful. But that's what we're all doing. So I got the whole family praying over this kid. And I told, just intuitively, I told the grandmother, I said, is there some holy water? Yes, go bring me the holy water. And I just started dousing him with holy waters. We're praying Hail Marys and Our Fathers and St. Michael's in Spanish. And I'm involved in this. My partner's looking, Jesse, what do? I said, start praying. And so I said, do you got a rosary as a scapular? Yes, bring them over here. So I'm putting them inside the guy's shirt so it can touch his body, putting them in his pants. And then he calms down. We're praying for probably about, think I'm on duty. And we're praying for about 30 minutes nonstop in Spanish in a loop. Dios te salve Maria, llena eres de gracia, Señor es contigo. And I'm scared. They're all scared. But I'm trying to act like I'm in control, like I know what I'm doing. And I connected. I said, this guy's been praying with a Ouija board. This guy's invited a demon. I'm dealing with something diabolical. The grandmother, the father said this guy has no history of drugs or alcohol, and he's a pretty kind of a squared away kid. Other than just playing with the Ouija board, there's nothing abnormal about him. We're praying.
Other than the demon, he's cool.
Yeah. Other than playing the Ouija board, he's okay, according to the grandmother and the father. The mom wasn't there. I never asked about the mom's situation. I think they were separated or divorced. So I'm praying again, St. Michael the Archangel prayer. I knew to pray that intuitively. The Anima Christi prayer. I'm even praying spontaneous prayers like, Jesus, help us. Mother Mary, help us. And this was all from the heart. And so all of a sudden, the kid, he starts moving. He stops wrestling. And I'm like saying, good, okay. But we were praying for about 30 to 40 minutes, okay? And again, I was not taught to do this by the Sheriff's Academy. This was something that was just my Catholic faith kicked in, my Catholic sensibilities. And we basically just bathed the room in prayer nonstop. And it was intense. And again, this kid, as we're praying, I mean, this guy's making ugly faces. This guy's screaming. This guy's growling. This guy's spitting. I hadn't seen somebody like that. I've dealt with a lot of drug addicts and stuff. and a lot of the backlash from them. But this was something even above and beyond. And so,
yeah, you're right on page 14. The teen's face seemed to change into a dark, ugly, monstrous face, and then come back to a normal human face. So you, again, you're not I know you, Jesse. I trust you. You're not taking writerly license and adding in colorful language or a fictitious mien, right? This is, you literally saw his face change. Yeah.
Yeah, it's what happens. The face gets darker, the teeth bare, the eyes there's an evil look to the eyes. You could see the veins on the head, the veins on the neck. They're just protruding. You could just see an agitation it's like ungodly.
Right. And this is something that's spoken to by a lot of people, actually. There's a great book out there, if you can track it down. And I had to get it through a university library because it's out of print. And it's actually by Tan, but it's out of print now. It's called Diabolical Possession and Exorcism by John Nicola. And he goes through and he talks about the various phenomena that manifest themselves during these encounters with the diabolical. And the face changing, like the aspect of the face and even the bone structure changing, is something that's very, very common to most, I don't want to say all, but to most exorcisms.
Yeah, they call that body morphine. That's what exorcists will call it. Now that I know, because I've got a lot of friends in the field, they call it body morphine. But here's probably the thing that shocked me more than anything else. Okay, when I see that, I mean, the guys were yelling, the uncles and the father, that he's strong, está fuerte. But once I saw that he calmed down, this teenager, I said, let him go. In Spanish, I said, let him go. And so he's calmed down. I said, good. I said, the prayers have obviously worked, and there's some type of relief that we provided. God just honored our simple faith. And so when I told him to let him go, I thought, well, maybe he's on the ground. I said, no, he's not on the ground. This guy, they had him off the air. He was off about probably a foot off of the air. So when I told him to let him go, I'm expecting for him to be placed on the ground. Well, he stood there. And so I'm like, okay, they let him go. Why isn't he on the ground? I literally,
good question.
When I first did, the first thing that I did, I said, no, this ain't, I'm not seeing this. I rubbed my eyeballs, and so did my partner. And then I got down in a push-up. I was a young guy, pretty good shape. I got down in a push-up position, and I'm looking, and I'm saying, this doesn't compute. This isn't
Where's
rational.
the wire, right?
Now, later on, I found out what this is called in Catholicism. This is called levitation. That the saints have done in times past, but also the diabolical can imitate that, and he can also cause that to happen to somebody who's spiritually afflicted. He was probably about 12 inches off the ground, and he just stood there. And so I think it was his father. His father just came and just pushed him down slowly to the ground. And again, the grandmother just reiterated to me that he's been playing with the Ouija board every night. She says she talks to somebody, in his room, and she goes, I think it's el diablo. I think it's el diablo, which means the devil.
If I had seen someone levitate like that, like on Ghostbusters, when I go straight above them and start feeling for the wires, right?
Again, I got down in a push-up position because I'm saying this is not happening. And so I looked and I'm saying, okay. And I didn't want to show fear, but was I afraid? Absolutely. You see a 12-year-old kid off the ground, suspended by nothing, and you're the cop that's assigned there at 12 midnight to take care of this mess? Are you kidding me? My heart almost jumped off my chest. And so, after about 40 minutes of intense prayer, and he stops thrashing, he stops growling, stops cursing, and he goes limp and silent. He opens his eyes, and after they push him down to the ground, and this young teen, he runs over to hug his grandmother and begins weeping. You could tell he had that real bond with his grandmother's abuelita. And he started saying, he was kind of Spanglish. The monster is gone, and the monster's gone. And so I sat down with the kid and had a quick heart-to-heart talk with him about his faith, so about being a friend of God, about the Ouija board, about, going back. Have you made your confirmation? Do you go to mass on Sunday? So I try to provide a little bit of catechesis in about 20 minutes. And I told him about, the dangers of the Ouija board as well. And he told me, I don't want this thing to ever come back again, officer. I don't want this to come back to him. I told him, then you've got to go to mass every Sunday. Have you made your confirmation? No, you've got to sign up for confirmation. You got to go to confession tomorrow. I know the priest down the street is about 6 blocks away. Go to confession tomorrow. And I told the father and the grandmother, he needs to confess this sin of playing with the Ouija board. This is an offense against the first commandment. I said, and you guys have to really come back into the practice of your Catholic faith. Everybody in this household. And we took the Ouija board, we put it in the trunk of our car, and they were so happy that I was there. They promised me that they were going to go the next morning, which in fact they did. I followed up. The priest called me up. He said, Jesse, a family came. Apparently you were there last night, and thanks for what you did. And they came over and saw me in the morning. Me and my partner went out to the hills of East LA, and we took the Ouija board and we burned it, and we just buried the ashes in the ground.
Yeah, that's something that is in Gabriel Amorth's book, actually, that you mentioned earlier. These accursed objects, and a lot of the times the possessed will have some kind of a talisman that is either under their mattress or under their pillow or inside the mattress, and sometimes it can even be found in the yard. And you need to ask the possessed. The exorcist needs to ask the possessed, how did this demon get into you, and where is this accursed object, if it was by way of some accursed object, and they'll have to tell them. And they need to go and burn or destroy, throw into living water, I think running water, or burn the object. And that's one way of freeing the person. On the matter of levitation, we also have on really good, strong, compelling testimony. I don't know if you know, Jesse, James J. Labar, who was the former exorcist for the Archdiocese of New York.
Yes.
And he said on record that he saw someone levitate above the pews in a church when he was doing an initial questioning of somebody suspected of diabolical manifestations.
There's also another famous case that happened. It was back in the East to a black family. They were a black Protestant family. It was just the mother and a couple of kids, where one of the kids was, they were having problems in the house. And one kid kept walking up and down the wall.
Yeah, they were on Hannity.
That's in Indiana.
Yeah, the cops, they couldn't pay the cops to go in that house. They didn't have a Jesse Romero in Indiana because there's a bunch of Protestants, man. So, I mean, that's the thing. That's a famous case. Sean Hannity, I don't think he really believed it. I'm not sure what he believes. Doesn't even believe in real conservatism. But, I mean, it's like you were taught to pray deliverance by your parents. Your fallen away partner said, this isn't in our training, was it? And you said, no, this is my father taught me to do this. I mean, what if it had been some other sheriff's deputy that goes out there? You would have, that family would have wound up like the Indiana family.
Right. And
Jesse Romero.
And here's what happens, Tim, and I'll be honest with you. And I've talked to my 2 boys that are cops out here in Phoenix. And I said, look, at a lot of cops, their lives are destroyed. Policemen have the highest alcoholism rate, highest suicide rate, and the highest divorce rate. Why is that? And I figured out why now after all these years. Here's what happens is because first responders are always putting their hands on people. You're under arrest, put your hands behind your back. When somebody resists, you go hands on, as they say. Now, here's what happens. A lot of first responders, they take these jobs because they do have, they're patriots. They have, love of country, love of neighbor, but a lot of them are not living in a state of grace. They're not in the right relationship with God. And what they're doing is they're touching people that are spiritually afflicted with demons. And there's a term that exorcists use. It's called demonic transference. What happens if you're putting your hands on a person that's spiritually afflicted with a demon, you can potentially, the spiritual baggage that that person carries could come over to you if you're not in a state of grace. And I'm going to be honest with you, most cops, especially if they're not Catholics, and even the Catholic ones, aren't in a state of grace. I mean, they have what's called natural virtue, and they've got good intentions, and they're go-getters. But the fact is, your bulletproof vest or your academy training does not protect you from the diabolical. What does protect you from the diabolical is living in the right relationship with God. And this is why a lot of cops end up bringing a lot of this spiritual diabolical baggage home as a result of all this contact with people that are spiritually afflicted. And what happens, the demons retaliate against your children and your wife.
Well, that was going to be my next question, Jesse, is, having seen some of this stuff firsthand and been just through the normal course of police work, having had run-ins with people who are spiritually afflicted, demonically afflicted, and even being in kind of, I don't want to call it deliverance ministry, but it's like a de facto deliverance ministry in as much as you come into contact with some people who are afflicted. Don't you see that? Are you worried about, or have you seen firsthand any diabolical attacks on yourself or your family? Because I've spoken to a priest who is very intertwined with the exorcism ministry, although he wasn't an exorcist himself. And he said he doesn't ever want to be called upon to do exorcisms because, whereas the chief exorcist of a diocese has special graces and special protections that keep kind of him safe and insulated from diabolical attack, people who are just part and parcel of a ministry, they don't necessarily have those special graces and special protections. So they open themselves up, like at the parish level. These folks who are in Catholic parishes, and there was one that I was working at a parish, and they had a deliverance ministry, and it's very foolish because these people are exposing themselves to things that they don't want to mess with, especially as a layman. Did you ever get any whiff of this back at your home? Was there any attack on you?
I'm sure I did. I can't articulate specifically because, again, we're talking with invisible entities, but I have no doubt that I've been retaliated against as a result of having been involved in a lot of things just like this, especially very early on when I would say that I didn't know the rules of engagement or the standard operating procedure. Probably in the last couple of years, as a result of my relationship with Father Chad Ripperger and Liber Christu, I've understood the do's and don'ts of spiritual warfare from a Catholic perspective. And now I've seen the deficient other models that are practiced within the Catholic Church. And so now, obviously, I make sure that I apply the Catholic rules of engagement whenever something like this happens. And I also make sure that I also share with other Catholics the do's and don'ts, because there certainly are do's and don'ts. Here's one of the big do's and don'ts. Only a Catholic priest can do what's called imprecatory prayers. Imprecatory is when you use the word I. Okay? I cast you out in Jesus' name, go to the foot of the cross. The imprecatory prayers can only be used by a Catholic priest, either the parish pastor or who's like a general practitioner, or the specialist, which would be the diocesan exorcist. What can a lay person do when they pray for somebody? Just say your neighbor comes up to you and says, I see you go to mass every Sunday. You seem to be pretty into your faith, and you live a pretty good virtuous life with you and your family. And I've been slamming heroin for the last 10 years, and I'm just wondering, dude, hey man, can you just say a prayer for me, man? I'm all screwed up right now. I want to kill myself. So here's what a Catholic would do if they don't know the standard operating procedure of the church. They say, sure, neighbor, I'll pray for you. So the uninformed Catholic that means well will do this. They'll put their hands on the neighbor, probably put his hand on his head and start saying, well, I cast you out, spirit of heroin, in Jesus' name, be gone to the foot of the cross. Wrong. What you just did is you open yourself to diabolical retaliation. Why? Because you have no authority as a non-priest to pray an imprecatory prayer over another person. Notice imprecatory means I. What do you have the authority to do? Deprecatory prayers, which is what you're calling God into the equation, or Our Lady. So you tell your neighbor that's a heroin addict, you say, sure, I'll pray for you. Make the sign of the cross. Lord, this is your son, your daughter over here. He loves you. He's asking you to heal him from his heroin addiction. Please, Lord Jesus, and come into his life and give him the grace, Lord, of the conversion, Lord. And Lord, we ask you, we beg you to set him free from this addiction to heroin. We beg you, Mother Mary, pray for him. Amen. That's a deprecatory prayer. What did I just do? I prayed for the neighbor that's a heroin addict, but I didn't step outside of my lane of authority.
But even St. Michael, since he was lower in the natural order of angels than Lucifer, it's by the power of God you are rebuked. You know, and when we say the St. Michael the Archangel prayer, it's by the power of God cast into Satan and all evil spirits. It's not just do this on your own, because St. Michael as an archangel is lower than Lucifer, who St. Thomas speculated was a cherubim and not a seraphim.
The St. Michael the Archangel prayer is known as the minor exorcism. That's a deprecatory prayer. And if you study the words of it, you're seeing that you're asking St. Michael to intervene. So a lay Catholic can pray deprecatory prayers over anybody. Deprecatory, not imprecatory. Number two, a lay Catholic, the only person a lay Catholic has authority to lay hands on is his wife and his children. Based on the fourth commandment, based on positive law, and based on natural law, you are the priest of your home. The church is your domestic church. You have the authority to lay hands on your wife and your children. Do you have the authority as a lay Catholic to lay hands on your neighbor who's a heroin addict, or your other neighbor who's strung out on pornography, and he's asking, hey, I see you go to Mass every Sunday. Can you pray for me? Here's what you would do for your neighbor if you feel called to pray for him as he's asking you right there on the spot, okay? That's why it's always good to carry a blessed object. I always have a St. Michael's, a rosary around my neck, a brown scapular, miraculous medal. So what I would do is this. When somebody asks me to pray for them, they say, you're a practicing Catholic. I've got how many nightmares, this, that, and the other. I said, sure, I'll pray for you. I take off my sacramental. I give it to them. I said, put it in your hand. I said, okay, look at this crucifix that I just gave you, this rosary. Look at it. Don't look at me. I have no power. Then at that point, I'll just pray a deprecatory prayer, like the St. Michael the Archangel prayer. That's a classic deprecatory prayer. Anima Christi, classic deprecatory prayer. Or just one from the heart. Lord, this man is coming to you in faith, Lord, and I beg you, Lord, you can do anything. I just ask you to heal him of his heroin addiction, of his pornography addiction. I beg you, Mother Mary, we pray for him and protect him and keep him safe, and wrap your mantle of authority and maternal love around him. Saint Joseph, terror demons, pray for him and protect him. Amen. That's the deprecatory prayer. And notice, I didn't lay my hands on him. And I tell people, look at realistically, these hands, I boxed for 10 years. They're not holy. They're not holy hands. I was a cop. I took a lot of people to jail. Okay. I put but I'll tell you what is holy, a sacramental. Sacramentals are objects that are blessed by the church, and they give actual grace. And so that's why it's good for a Catholic to carry sacramentals. Give them to somebody that's asking you to pray for them. Put them in their hand. They're in contact with the holy object, the sacramentals. Now you can pray a deprecatory prayer. And what's even better than that, I did it last night. A guy talked to me last night in the church. Good Catholic guy. But he says, I was attacked on Monday night by a demon that started attacking me sexually. And he got into details, and I don't want to say it right here. But there is the name for the sexual demon. I don't want to mention it on the show. And so I listened to him, and he's crying, and he showed me his hands. He goes, he's an older gentleman, daily mass guy. He showed me his hands. He had bruises on his hands and on his forearms and on his wrist. He says, this happened to me on Monday. And he broke down crying to me. I said, okay. I said, let's walk up to the tabernacle. There's where the power's at right now. We walked up there. I said, let's get on our knees. I said, put your hands and touch that tabernacle. And at this point, I can see he's broken up. He's terrified from what happened 2 nights ago. He was very graphic what happened to me. I don't want to mention it right here because it's dark what happened to him on Monday with a demon that took a female form and jumped in bed with him. That's all I'm going to say. It was brutal. And so on Wednesday, when we prayed, I just said, okay. I said, repeat after me. Touch the tabernacle. That's where the power's at. Jesus is in there. He's on his knees. So am I. And I said, repeat after me. So I just took him through an act of contrition in case there's something there. I said, do it from your heart. Then I took him, okay, let's start renouncing this evil spirit that you had an encounter with on Monday. And we renounced it. Now, let's ask the Holy Spirit to fill you now with strength and courage and faith and hope and love. As he's praying and holding the tabernacle, he's weeping the whole time and he's shaking. I can see that he's reliving what happened to him on Monday night. So again, these are the proper procedures. And I've learned all this from Father Ripperger. It's not that I'm a smart guy. It's that I'm connected with these guys. And so I know the standard operating procedures that keep a Catholic safe and protected.
Wow. Jesse, we're almost out of time. I wanted to ask you, one of these other rules of thumb would be the rule of thumb, a litmus test. That's got to be in there. And I like how you use 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 3. Jesus is Lord. But if people are seriously worried of a serious bent of mind and think that someone they know might be possessed or might be getting messed with by the demons, you can ask them to say, Jesus is Lord. This is a faster story. This is also right at the beginning of the book, pages, I think, 8 and 9. You talk about this guy. Again, I'm just glad that you were a sheriff's deputy, not following protocols. You're trained by your father, God bless him. And you're doing all this stuff without fear of legal reprisal. But you talk in the book. Can you just really quickly go through that story? We're about out of time. Like, there's a guy in a cell. You offer him quality food, but you condition it. You say, hey, I'll get you some of the non-crap you're eating there. But first, I want to hear you say Jesus is Lord. Can you just tell us that? That's a great story.
Tell us the ACLU now.
Yeah, there's a section of the jail called the Mentally Ill Offenders Unit where you have all the psychopaths and serial killers and sociopaths. And so I go through their files. I'm a young guy. I'm 21 years old. I'm just right out of the academy. That's my first assignment. And I'm just kind of curious as to what these guys did. I got time. I'm a high-paid babysitter. I got to do a 15-minute walk. Every 15 minutes, I got to walk the 200 solitary cells and check on them and feed them and give them a magazine. And so I said, I'm going to read about these guys. So as I read about all these guys, it took me about 2 weeks to read all their police reports, psych evals, and probation reports. I saw that about over 50 to 60% of these guys all had stated in the reports that they had committed the crimes of homicide as a result of being told by a demon or being a Satanist or these voices, demonic voices, impaling them in this direction. And so I told my sergeant and lieutenant, I'm a rookie, I'm a nobody. I'm saying, hey, Sarge, I've read all these reports and stuff, and all these guys that are here, 60% of them, I did the math, I made little sticks on a paper, 60% of these guys have committed homicide. They said they were told to by a demon or by Satan or by the devil or they're Satanists. Does the LA Sheriff's Department know this? They go, wow, this is very interesting information. You got the data? I said, yeah. I separated all the names, the ones that are satanic killers. They said, let's give this to homicide. This is something very interesting. We never made a connection with this. And so so I knew where all the satanic killers were because I'd read all the reports and I know I'm talking to them every day and feeding them, giving them a magazine. And so I remember the Sunday right before the second reading at Holy Mass was 1 Corinthians 12:3. Nobody can say Jesus is Lord except by the power of the Holy Spirit. So I'm like a 21-year-old. I'm still kind of like, a half-baked Catholic. I hadn't gone through a real conversion yet. I'm just kind of a cultural Catholic. I go to Mass every Sunday, but my heart wasn't there. But I just did it because I'm Mexican-American, live in the barrio, and that's what we all do. But my heart wasn't there. So I said, okay, I'm going to tell this guy cell number 3 is a satanic killer, cell number 5, cell number 9. I'm just going to ask these guys that they can say this. And I'm going to offer them a Thanksgiving meal because they fed the officers really well, okay, in the jail. And these guys got, The food was mass produced for the inmates. So the first guy that I talked to, I'll tell you who I talked to. I talked to Richard Ramirez. He was the night called the Night Stalker, and he was a fairly famous killer here in Southern California back in the 80s. And so as I told Ramirez, I said, hey, Ramirez, I said, you want a Thanksgiving meal? Hey, just humor me and say the words, Jesus is Lord. He goes, is that it? That's all I got to do? I said, yeah, just say Jesus is Lord. And you know how we eat, the officers, I got the keys. I'll go bring you a Thanksgiving meal. You can order up and I'll give you anything you want. So he goes, sure. I mean, you know, so he said, and he's trying to say Jesus is Lord, matter of factly. And all of a sudden, as I'm looking at him, I'm noticing that he can't say it. So I'm saying, okay, he's messing with me. He's messing with me. I'm saying, come on, dude, say it. He's trying. And it's all of a sudden you can see he starts holding his neck like if something's choking him, like he's trying to pull something out, and he's gagging. And now his mouth shuts, kind of like when a guy's got a broken jaw and they got that wired jaw. Yeah. He can't even open his mouth. It's like he's got cement or glue in his mouth. Now I'm seeing his face turn beet red, different shades of red. And then as he's holding, and I'm saying, come on, dude, come on. I think he's horsing around. I got two of the rookie cops. They're all watching this. He collapses to one knee, and I'm saying, this is weird. The guys next to me, the other rookies, they said, hey, Romero, hey, don't do this no more, man. This is weird. They said, this guy's not faking it, man. Don't do this. This other cop said, he goes, dude, it's cold here, man. It's cold. Who turned off the heater? The temperature just dropped in that whole jail cell like 40 degrees. And the other guy said, man, I feel cold right now. He goes, Romero, don't do that again. We closed the door and we looked at each other. And all three of them said, "What? Why'd you do that?" I said, you know, man, I'm a Catholic. I went to Mass on Sunday. I heard this, and I'm not sure if this is true. And I was just curious. I just want to see if a satanic serial killer can say this. And he goes, well, they told me you got your answer. You got your answer, dude. Don't do it again.
It brings two thoughts to mind and it's in the Johannine epistles somewhere. I forget if it's 1 John or, but you know, the spirit of Antichrist is anyone who denies that Christ is Lord come in the flesh, right? And then number two, this is something that happened with Padre Pio, reportedly happened with Padre Pio. When he would spend time in the confessional, the devil would come to attack him, right? And sometimes he would get kind of an idea that the penitent that was confessing was actually a diabolical manifestation. And what he would do would be very much like what you just said. He would say, okay, say, blessed be the Holy Trinity, or long live Christ the King, or something to that effect. And then on a couple of occasions, this specter would vanish in a puff of foul-smelling smoke after he said that.
I've read the same thing, yeah.
Yeah, so this is a commonality. You know, these stories that you hear, these anecdotes, one of the ways that you can know that they are believable and true is that they are just, there's a common thread running through them, right? And these are things that you're going to hear from almost all exorcists. So it's not just guys coming in with zany stories. There's the ring of truth about them because they're corroborated by the statements of other believable people.
Yeah, by the tradition of the church, past experience. Yeah, you're right.
Jesse, we're out of time, brother, but this has been great. Everyone run out and get this book. It came out, what a month and a half ago? 2 months ago?
Yeah, about 2 months ago, yeah.
Yeah. The book is The Devil in the City of Angels, Jesse Romero. It's a book on Tan Books, and we support it. The fascinating stories. I read the introduction, and I was like, this is cool. When I was in the hospital, I only got to chapter 1. It just drew me in the next day in the hospital. So really, really good stuff. And there's a bunch more stories like this. Jesse Romero, trustworthy man that he is, a lot of this stuff happened to you, man. Has all this happened to many cops, or you think it's just you?
No, I think it happens to a lot of first responders. They see this, and you know what happens, Tim? Because they don't have a faith component, what they do is they go into some type of addictive behavior to cope with it, and they end up making a mess of their career and a mess of their lives and a mess of their marriages. The way I coped with it, all these experiences drew me closer and closer from lukewarm Catholicism to a fervent Catholic faith.
Beautiful. Well, thanks a million, Jesse, and we look forward to having you back on. And I love coming on your show. I love working with you in Southern California. Man, God bless you, brother, and thanks for everything. Everyone pick up this book as soon as you can, and we'll catch you around Rules for Retrogrades very soon.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
All right. Talk to you soon.
Yeah, God love you. Thank you.
Amen. Thank you.